I'm going to play for you a video clip of what Michael Wolff said Epstein told him was in the safe and what he showed the author was in this safe. Okay, so that's great. So wouldn't it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
That's just false. You're the FBI. You can subpoena the information from the estate, and you better do that.
Kash Patel walked into that hearing thinking he had survived the worst of it. Hours of grilling were already behind him. He knew which Epstein files were released. He knew which ones weren't. Every answer was rehearsed. Every pivot was practiced. He was ready. Then Ted Lieu did something nobody saw coming. He didn't pull out a document. He didn't quote a statute. He didn't read from a binder. He just pressed play on a video, a journalist, a safe, and a story about what Jeffrey Epstein allegedly kept locked inside it for years. And in the next 5 minutes, the FBI Director of the United States, under oath on camera on the congressional record, could not clearly answer 3 questions. A journalist sitting on 100 hours of Epstein recordings the FBI may have never even tried to obtain. A safe full of photographs Patel insisted didn't exist. And a client list with 2 names he refused to confirm or deny, even when asked directly. Twice. 5 minutes. 3 unanswered questions. And a transcript that now lives in the congressional record forever. Before we get into exactly what happened, quick thing. We've covered pieces of the story before. But new details just dropped. The entire case is back in the spotlight, and there are gaps in the public record that nobody is connecting. So this is an update. If you're new here, hit subscribe. We break these down as they actually develop. No noise. No spin. Now back to that hearing room.
Have you asked to talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to Michael Wolff.
Has the FBI asked?
But the FBI, I'll get back to you if the FBI specifically
so Michael Wolff has
ever.
About 100 hours of testimony of Jeffrey Epstein. Wouldn't it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff?
I'm not saying they haven't. I just don't know.
Has FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
Ted Lieu represents California in the House of Representatives. But before politics, he wasn't a lawyer in a corner office. He was a JAG officer in the United States Air Force, a military prosecutor who ran investigations and tried cases in a system where I don't know is not an answer that survives the room. He later climbed to the rank of colonel in the Air Force Reserve before retiring in 2021. Stanford degree, Georgetown law degree, and a seat on the House Judiciary Committee, which is exactly where this exchange unfolded, on Patel's second consecutive day of congressional testimony. That background matters more than people realize. Lieu wasn't a politician fishing for a viral clip. He was a man who had spent decades sitting across from witnesses who were paid to know the facts of their own case. So when Patel started saying, "I don't know," Lieu heard it differently than anyone else in that room. He started simple. The basics. The FBI searched Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan residence in 2019, correct? Patel confirmed it. Among the items they recovered was a safe, correct? Patel said he didn't have the evidence catalog in front of him. Stop right there. Just sit with that for a second. The director of the FBI, testifying about the most publicly scrutinized case under his entire oversight, does not have the evidence catalog in front of him. In a planned hearing, on day 2, under oath, Lieu pressed forward. FBI found a safe, correct? Patel said he would accept the congressman's representation. Not a yes, not a confirmation based on his own knowledge of his own agency's investigation. He would simply accept the congressman's version of what the FBI itself had recovered. Then came the safe's contents. Inside, agents discovered a collection of photographs. Patel gave the same answer. "I'll accept your representation." "I don't know." Lieu made the point plainly. This was not classified. This was not buried. The New York Times reported it on July 8, 2019. A trove of photographs recovered from a safe inside Epstein's Manhattan mansion, disclosed as part of the federal charges that year. It wasn't obscure. It wasn't a leak. It was front-page news. And the director of the FBI said he didn't know. That pattern, "I'll accept your representation," quietly established something massive before Lieu even reached his main questions. Because a director who accepts a congressman's account of his own agency's evidence catalog is a director who has either not reviewed the case closely or has decided not to say so on the record. Either way, The tone was set, and Lieu was about to use it. Enter Michael Wolff. Wolff is one of the most recognized journalists in Washington. You know him from Fire and Fury, the book that exposed the inside of the first Trump White House. But here's what most people don't realize. By his own account, Wolff is the journalist who spent the most time with Jeffrey Epstein before his arrest. Roughly 100 hours of recorded interviews stretched across years. He has released portions publicly, and in one of those tapes, Epstein himself describes Donald Trump as his closest friend for a decade. Lieu played a clip. In it, Wolff describes a very specific moment. Epstein walked over to his safe. He pulled out a stack of photographs, and he spread them out, like playing cards, and showed Wolff exactly what was on them. Lieu paused the clip. Then he turned to Patel and asked the question that lit the room up. Are there any photographs showing Donald Trump with individuals connected to Epstein's operation? Patel said no. Lieu asked, how do you know? Patel said that kind of information would have been surfaced by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the course of the last 20 years. And Lieu calmly stopped him. That is just not true. Because nobody knew about the birthday message Trump reportedly sent Epstein until the Wall Street Journal broke it. And when it surfaced, it didn't come from the FBI. It came from the Epstein estate, handed directly to Congress. The FBI didn't find it. The FBI didn't release it. The FBI didn't even know. And Patel, to his credit, or maybe to his collapse, said this. You raise a great point. Sit with that. Just for a moment. Patel had just argued that 20 years of federal investigation would have surfaced any significant material. Lieu handed him one documented example. Material the FBI had completely missed, and Patel agreed. Not defended, not pushed back. Agreed. That is not the language of a director confident in his agency's review. That is the language of someone who just had his own argument turned against him in real time and chose surrender over defense. Lieu moved to the tapes. 100 hours. Recorded. Real. Released in pieces. Reported on by major outlets. In November 2024, Wolff dropped the recording where Epstein himself calls Trump his closest friend for a decade. These tapes are not secret. They are not theoretical. They are the most extensive on-record account of Epstein's inner world that exists anywhere outside the FBI's own files. Lieu asked directly, has the FBI subpoenaed Michael Wolff's tapes? Patel said, I don't know. Lieu pressed, would it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff? Patel said he couldn't confirm they hadn't already. He just didn't know. He'd get back to him. Read that again. The director of the FBI does not know whether his own bureau has contacted the journalist holding the largest on-record interview archive of Jeffrey Epstein in existence. That is not a minor gap. That is not a technicality. Wolff's tapes have been public knowledge for years. The question of whether the FBI moved to obtain them is not obscure. It is the most obvious investigative step you can imagine. And the answer, under oath on the record before the Judiciary Committee, was I don't know. Lieu moved on. To the estate. He reminded the room the birthday message came from the Epstein estate, not the FBI. So should the FBI subpoena the estate for everything it holds? Patel said the estate is not obligated to provide material, even under subpoena. Lieu stopped him cold. That is just false. You're the FBI, Lieu said. You can subpoena the information. And you should. Patel, that is literally not how it works. Lieu, I'm moving on. That disagreement never got resolved in real time. But the stakes are simple. If Patel is right, the FBI has no legal path to evidence the estate is sitting on. If Lieu is right, the FBI has had that path the entire time and has chosen not to use it. One of those is true. And the FBI director, instead of committing to find out, told a sitting congressman the estate had no obligation to comply. The room left without an answer. The camera kept rolling. Then Lieu closed with the part nobody saw coming. The client list. Patel had already confirmed, in earlier testimony, that a list of names connected to Epstein's operation exists. Attorney General Pam Bondi had said the same. Earlier in 2025, Bondi told reporters the list was on her desk and under review. Then a DOJ memo came out and quietly walked it back, saying there was no client list in the way the public had imagined. That contradiction was never cleanly resolved, and Lieu had two names he wanted answers on. Is Prince Andrew on the list? Patel said the material related to Prince Andrew had been made public. Lieu asked again, Is Prince Andrew on the client list? Patel said the FBI had released the index of names. Lieu pushed. Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list? Patel said the index had been released. The index would speak for itself. That is not an answer. That is the architecture of avoiding one. The index was not what Lieu asked about. He asked about 2 specific names, and whether they appear on a list the FBI director himself had already confirmed exists. A yes or no question. Twice. And twice, Patel pointed to an index instead of answering it. If the answer is no, that is one word. Patel didn't say it. Lieu closed his 5 minutes by telling the committee what everyone in that room was already thinking. It is a significant red flag that the FBI director cannot say, under oath, whether Donald Trump is on the Epstein client list. The chair called time. 3 things came out of those 5 minutes, and they all sit on the record now, permanently. 1. Patel said photographs of the kind Wolf described don't exist. And then, in the same exchange, admitted the FBI didn't even know about the birthday message until outside reporting forced it into daylight. 2. Patel said he didn't know if his bureau had ever contacted the journalist holding 100 hours of Epstein interviews. 3. Patel refused to answer yes or no on 2 specific names on a list he had already confirmed exists. None of those are accusations. They are answers, given under oath by the director of the FBI. What they suggest about how thoroughly this bureau has pursued the most watched case in modern American history. That is the question Lieu put on the record. Patel's answers are sitting right next to it, and the pattern across those 5 minutes was the same thing, over and over. I'll accept your representation. I don't know. The index will speak for itself. Each one technically responded to the question. None of them actually answered it, and every single one left the same gap between what was asked and what was said, between what the FBI director confirmed exists and what he was willing to confirm directly. The questions are on the record, the answers are on the record, and the gap between them, that's the part that won't go away. Here is what makes this exchange different from a normal oversight hearing. None of Liu's questions were speculative. He wasn't asking Patel to confirm internet rumors. He wasn't fishing for conspiracies. He was asking about publicly documented material, evidence in major newspapers, recordings already released, investigative steps the FBI either took or didn't. The safe, real. The photographs, reported. Wolf's tapes, public. The birthday message, surfaced by outside reporting, not the FBI. None of that was disputed in the hearing. What was disputed was something much narrower and far more damaging. Whether the FBI had actually pursued the material available to it, and whether the director of the Bureau was prepared to say so, clearly on the record. That is where the hearing turned. Because every time Lieu narrowed the question down to a single direct point, Patel moved sideways instead of forward. Did the FBI subpoena the tapes? I don't know. Did the FBI contact Wolf? I can't say they didn't. Is Prince Andrew on the list? The index was released. Is Donald Trump on the list? The index will speak for itself. Those are not denials. They are not confirmations. They are answers engineered to land in neither category. And in congressional testimony, that distinction gets noticed immediately, especially by someone like Lieu, whose entire questioning was built to force clarity 1 inch at a time. That is why the exchange escalated the way it did. Not because voices were raised, not because anyone lost composure, but because the more specific Lieu got, the less specific Patel got. By the end of the 5 minutes, this wasn't a hearing about Epstein anymore. It was a hearing about credibility. Could the FBI director confidently account for what his agency had done, reviewed, and possessed in one of the most scrutinized cases of the last 2 decades? Patel never quite established that confidence. And that is exactly why those 5 minutes spread across the internet within hours. Not because of a smoking gun. There was no smoking gun. Something else happened. Something Washington often treats as just as damaging. Visible hesitation. On questions that should have had straightforward answers. That is what kept resurfacing in every clip, every transcript, every commentary thread after the hearing ended. Not one explosive revelation, but a repeating pattern. I don't know. I'll accept your representation. The index will speak for itself. 3 phrases, over and over, attached to some of the most direct questions of Patel's entire testimony. And once they hit the congressional record, they stay there, no matter what comes next. There is one more layer to this exchange, and it became clearer after the hearing ended, not during it. Patel was not a low-level official unfamiliar with the case. He was the director of the FBI, the person ultimately responsible for the Bureau's investigative decisions, public credibility, and operational record. That position changes the standard completely. When an FBI director says, "I don't know about a routine detail in a quiet case," that is one thing. But when the subject is Jeffrey Epstein, a case examined for years, across multiple administrations, involving international scrutiny, public distrust, sealed records, and persistent allegations of incomplete disclosure, every "I don't know" carries weight. And it stacks. Lieu understood that. That is why his questions stayed locked on process, not theory. Did the FBI review the tapes? Did the FBI pursue the estate? Did the FBI verify the photographs? Did the FBI know what was inside the safe? These are not abstract political questions. These are operational questions. Questions about what investigative steps were actually taken inside the building Patel runs. And Patel's answers kept circling back to the limits of his own knowledge, instead of confidence in his agency's actions. That distinction may end up mattering more than any single answer he gave. Because congressional hearings aren't only about facts. They're about perception. About whether the person testifying appears informed, prepared, and confident in the institution they lead. For critics of the FBI, Patel's answers confirmed what they already suspected, that critical parts of the Epstein investigation were either incomplete or never fully pursued. For Patel's defenders, the hearing showed a director refusing to speculate about sensitive material in open session. But even those defenses don't close the gap. The questions were straightforward. Many of the answers were not. That gap is what turned an ordinary oversight hearing into a national moment within hours. Because people watching weren't trying to decode legal jargon. They were reacting to something much simpler. A senior official being asked direct questions, repeatedly declining to give direct answers. That dynamic translates instantly, regardless of politics. And it became even more obvious near the end of the exchange, when Lieu stopped trying to extract explanations and shifted to something else entirely. He started putting the uncertainty itself on the record. That was the meaning of his closing line, the red flag statement. He wasn't arguing over a document anymore. He wasn't arguing over an investigative step. He was arguing that the inability or unwillingness to answer clearly had itself become the story. That is a brutal position for any FBI director to be in publicly, especially in a case where public skepticism already has a decade of momentum behind it, where every unanswered question online creates 10 more by the end of the day. By the time the chair ended the round, the exchange had created two competing narratives, both true at the same time. One narrative says the hearing exposed massive unanswered questions about the Epstein investigation and proved that the FBI still cannot clearly account for major pieces of evidence and testimony. The other says the hearing showed how impossible it is to discuss sensitive investigative material in public without fueling speculation past what the evidence proves. Those two narratives are colliding right now in real time. And the reason this hearing won't stop circulating? Neither side believes it actually settled anything. If anything, it did the opposite. It reopened questions millions of people thought had already been answered years ago.